Women make up nearly 50% of all gamers, yet only a small percentage of women play esports professionally. It's time we figure out how to change that. The Knights want to empower women to build their esports empire. Along with our partner PNC Bank, we are adamant about creating a more equitable future for gamers. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, so we'll be tackling the issue from all angles, featuring insights from a variety of subject matter experts and professionals. I'm Kat DeShieldsman with the Knights. Welcome to the Women in Esports Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Women in Esports Podcast presented by the Pittsburgh Knights and PNC Bank. We are so thrilled to have you join us this afternoon for episode 4. So if you have not checked out episode 1, 2, and 3, don't worry about it. It's on YouTube. You can definitely hop in and check it out there. But today I have the distinct pleasure and privilege of welcoming EMUHLEET to the show. She is a 5-time CSGO world champion and the current captain of Dignitas. EMUHLEET, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being here. The hardest part of planning this episode was, where do I even start? You know, there's just so many questions that I have in the industry. I'm sure there's a lot of other women that are out there that want to do what you're doing. So this episode is going to be focused on tips and best practices, some guidance from an expert who's been there, done that, and killing the game, so that you too can get started on your journey to go pro. So to kick things off, I always ask this question because it's fascinating. Nobody's entry point into gaming and esports is ever the same. So how did you get into gaming?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and I always say that my brother is the one that kind of first introduced me into gaming. I think a lot of people can relate to that when I first started as the older brother. But my very first memory of playing a video game was on Nintendo 64 and on GoldenEye. I was a huge James Bond fan. I don't know if you like James Bond, but I do. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so that was kind of my first game that I remember distinctively playing. And it was also a competitive game. Like, you didn't want to lose against your brother or his friends. So it really did start early on for me.
I can completely understand. It was my younger brother that got me into gaming. I thought that him building computers and having a LAN party instead of going to prom was a clear indicator that he was going to go into gaming. But lo and behold, here we are. That's awesome. So, at what point did you realize that gaming is something that you wanted to turn into more of that you wanted to become more than a hobby or just something fun to do with your brother?
Well, I was kind of always a competitive person, like I said. And so once I started to learn about the competitive side of Counter-Strike, is my first esport game, I started to just fall in love with it. I was playing soccer, and just like that adrenaline rush that I would get when it was on me to, like, I was defense, so to block a goal, for example, I got that same adrenaline rush when I was playing Counter Strike. It's on to me to hit that off shot or to clutch around. So the competitive side is what made me fall in love with it. And then that transitioned over into putting a lot of time into it. It was becoming my passion. It wasn't a hobby. It isn't a hobby. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. So, was CSGO like the first competitive game that you really got into? Have you explored any other titles in your career?
No, and it's funny because I'm a gamer, but I'm not a gamer. I don't play a lot of other games other than the one that I want to invest all my time into because I want to be good at it. I don't want to just be I don't know if we can curse, but half as good.
Definitely, yeah. Can't have to keep it PG for this one, but
Okay, half as good.
no, that's fantastic. Okay, so uh, tell us about the first time you competed at a grassroots level and what that experience was like, putting yourself out there in a tournament with prize pools and money on the line. Like, how did that differ from, playing with friends or playing online competitively? What was that like?
Uh, well, I had two firsts, and the first one was where I played in a local land center, like what you were mentioning, with just some friends, and that experience was really interesting because one, I was probably one of the only girls that was there. There was a few other ones, but it was rare. It was a rare sighting to see other ones. So for me, I wanted to be recognized as a player that was good, not just a player that was there as a girl.
Mhm.
And then my second experience would be when I first played in an international tournament, and I was working a full time job as a nurse, and we had no sponsors, no financial backing. So I literally put my heart and soul into the team that I created to play in our first tournament. So just that whole experience was something that try to tell people you have to go through like rocky roads to get where you want to go. And it's always more of a better feeling of accomplishment when you've earned where you are rather than getting it handed to you.
No, that's an excellent point because I think a lot of the conversation that's happening in esports right now is creating more opportunities for women to get involved and to get engaged. But there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to build these communities and opportunities, to diversify the landscape. What advice would you provide to organizations or esports teams that are looking to increase gender diversity for their organizations and tournaments in general?
That's a really good question. I think when I first was playing Counter Strike, there was definitely a lack of support from organizations, top tier teams. People weren't really discussing the fact that women needed and wanted recognition. 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 Oh my god, I can't say that word. We'll leave the word out. Wanted to just know that hey, we're here. We worked just as hard as you guys, and we want to be recognized. There we go. That's the And so when I transitioned from CS to Valorant, I'm noticing that's exactly what's happening. We have um, really popular streamers that are noticing how good we are and how hard we work. Organizations and teams like Knights and Dignitas and top tier that have never invested in like TSM and Cloud9. This is just the beginning. So I think we're on the right path of where I want to see us to be. There's so many girls that are coming out of their shells and starting to compete. So it's really nice to see.
No, I know it's exciting for me because it's like, where are all the women at? I don't know where they are, so to see like the effort being made on both ends and then you just the stigma of playing games as a woman, kind of disappearing. Still there, still some work to do, but it's not as polarizing as it used to be. It's very, very encouraging. So let's talk about just for a second women, young women, even women who are older who want to explore what esports has to offer. What would you say are three important things that the aspiring esports player, female esports player, should consider at the beginning of their journey?
I love that you said any age because gaming is essentially an ageless sport. Like, with sports, when you're 25, you're becoming to the end of your career. But with
Right?
gaming, we have dads and moms and like people 35 that are still competing. So it's an ageless sport. So one thing is definitely no matter when you start is just getting started, and I think having trying to create a support group around you. Because when I first started, I didn't have anyone that kind of supported what I did. It wasn't really like a known career, and so I started to make friends with people who shared the same passion as me. So try to find the same support group as you if you want to go pro. I think that's important to realize. And it's also nice because if you have the same passion as the people around you, it can help encourage you to push yourself a little bit more, elevate yourself, get better, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and number three, probably to just get your foot in there. That's kind of the scariest part is to play in your first tournament. You have to fail in order to win. And just being able to take a loss is also really important because a lot of people don't realize, but we as women are very competitive. And so don't be afraid to show your competitive side. If you want to taunt your enemies, that's great. Like gaming is a mental sport. You want to be able to win your game. So step out of your shell and don't be afraid to just get started because that's how you have to get started after all.
Well, if you don't take anything else from this podcast, there you go. 3 essential tips to get started on your pro journey. But stay tuned because we got a lot more coming, y'all. This is awesome. Thank you. So I wanted to jump back to a point that you made earlier about how you selected CS and dialed in. Like that was the one, you were going to sink all of your energy and focus into that game to get as good as you possibly could with it. What tips or advice would you have for, and it doesn't just have to be women, just, aspiring pros in general on deciding what game that to invest in? Because goodness knows there's a lot of different titles out and there's more coming every day, that are esports viable, especially from a competitive standpoint. So what advice would you give to somebody for identifying that game to stick to?
Probably just listening to your heart is the best tip I can give. For me, like I said, I come from a sports background. I played soccer, so I loved a team game for me. So that's why I loved Counter-Strike. This is why I love Valorant. I'm working with my teammates constantly. Now there's other esports where it's just you, for instance, like Hearthstone. It's just you, and that's more if maybe you're not wanting to work with other teammates and you got that solo star in you, and that's not for me. But again, what I'm trying to say is listen to your heart. What is something that makes you happy and that you know that you can devote a lot of time to and sacrifice a lot of time with other things into this one thing?
No, that's an awesome distinction because I don't think a lot of people think about it in that perspective. It's like, am I more of a team player and I like being in a space with other people and we're all working together, or is it just, I'm just in my lane, I'm doing my own thing, don't bother me, So that's
Mhm.
very good advice. That's great. Um, when it comes to building a team or joining a team, what are some good ways to go about finding a home and people that you can grow with? Especially because, when you hop on to online games, you might not play with the same people all the time. So, how can one navigate that portion of the journey?
Wow, it's been so long since I made my team. I've been on my current team for 7 years now. So if I'm thinking back towards the beginning, it was quite a process of, seeing what girls meshed with each other's personalities best, and who like shared the same passion. Because, for example, sometimes when we were trialing someone out to join the team, they were not willing to make the sacrifice needed to try and become a champion team. And that's my goal as a team leader. So just trying to find teammates that have the same goals as you is important. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You want to make sure that you're going to be finding a team where you have trust in each other. I want my teammates to know that I have their back not only in game, but also outside of the game. Building that good bond and good chemistry is really important. And then also in terms of what game you're playing, it matters of what your agent is. So in Valorant, for example, you want to make sure that you have either a broad pool of what agent you're going to play because that makes you more valuable as a player and more likely to be picked up by a team. And my last tip, oh my gosh, is being willing to listen and take criticism, because it's hard when somebody is trying to tell you, hey, you did this wrong, you need to fix this. But trust me, it's all out of love. It's not someone trying to hate on you. And just be a sponge, take it in, soak it up, and grow from it.
Yeah, and I mean that advice applies to esports and it applies to a bunch of other things, you know. So even if you're not in esports, constructive criticism is one of the best ways to level up in whatever you're doing. That's
True that,
awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so yes. So wow, there's so much. I have so many questions for you, and there's not enough hours in the day. So let's talk about. You were talking about the sacrifice needed to be a champion, to having a champion mentality. What does your practice regimen look like? Like, what kind of training or, um, practice sessions do you individually put yourself through, and then what do you do with your team to kind of lock in that championship mentality?
Our schedule has changed once we've gone to Valorant. In Counter Strike, we were training a little bit longer days. I think that's because matches in Counter Strike are longer. They're an hour, sometimes more. So we train for about 5 to 6 days a week, for 6 to 8 hours a day. And between this time, I tried to let everybody know to take a break in between. I'm a nurse, so injury prevention is important to me. Um, and in the beginning, we would do about an hour of reviews. If we had any recorded VODs of our scrims, and then we would do some aim training. So we would be shooting bots or death matching, just kind of practicing our hand-eye coordination and our reflexes. And then we would just scrim other teams for about 4 to 5 hours. So those would be our practice days. And then on top of that, we have homework essentially, where you need to watch a VOD, or if there's something that we struggled with that day, that's going to be your focus on figuring out how to fix it for the next day. So lots of time that's being invested into just our practice, but it's hardcore training for whatever tournament might pop up, because sometimes it's last minute.
I know that's great. And yes, you are, I don't know how you do it, girl, honestly. Working as a nurse, thank you so much for all you've done, by the way. Shout out to all of our medical and healthcare professionals out there, keeping us safe and helping out in this crazy, crazy year and a half that we've
Yes.
we've had. So shout
Yes.
out to anybody out there that's watching. You're my superhero. Um, but when it comes to juggling your responsibilities as a captain, and there's a lot, like just the training regimen you just shared was like, that's a whole job within itself. How do you do nursing and your work as a captain and still make time to, you know, self-care, mental health checks, make time for
Mhm.
yourself?
Mhm. I I'm fortunate enough to have stopped doing nursing actually 2 years ago. But which is right before the pandemic, that's crazy enough. But for 4 to 5 years, I was doing full-time nursing and this schedule with my team. And I would be lying if I said it was easy, because it's not. There's not enough time in the day simply to do everything that you want to do. So you have to sacrifice things here and there, weigh out the pros and the cons. So for anybody that's watching that has a job like what I had in nursing, something kind of tedious that takes up a lot of time from you wanting to follow your passion, I want to let you know that organization was my life and scheduling was key. Organization and scheduling. My life is literally timed out to the T on a schedule. Like I have a time, an hour, 12 to 1, where I need to take a break for my mental health. So this is where I'll sit down and just kind of refresh myself a little bit, because I didn't do that before and it was hard. It was very hard on myself. So organization and scheduling is key. Make sure that you have this because it kind of helps relieve a little bit of stress, I guess, being organized and not being like, oh, I gotta go, I have to hurry up from work and I have to go do this. And trust me, I know all about that.
No, that's excellent advice, mental health and wellness checks are so, so important, 'cause burnout is real no matter what industry you're in, but especially so if you're pioneering in a new industry. That's an uphill trek that can get kind of daunting. So, yes, Emily's advice is right on target. Sticking with good advice because there's a plethora of it right now and I'm loving it. Um, what resources or streamers or what places can women in particular go to better understand what competitive esports is, what it looks like? Are there any people or tools or platforms that really helped you out in your journey?
In my journey, to be honest, no, there was nothing. Me and my
That's fair,
teammates,
yeah.
yeah, and so many other girls were kind of just paving the way for to make it easier for women now. And I would say now it is easier than when we first started to become a professional. And that's great. That's what we wanted. That's what we've been fighting for this whole time, is a space in this area. And now we have organizations like Dignitas, for example. They created Radiant, which is a platform to kind of recognize women in esports, create a community where people can help and support each other. There's Galorants, which is a really great, awesome community as well, um, that has tournaments and just kind of another area, safe space where women can meet each other and create teams and stuff. So all of these platforms are great. Knights is hosting tournaments, so it's giving a lot of amateur teams an opportunity and a platform to show what they've got and get that experience. So many amazing things I wish I had when I first started, but I'm glad I went through what I went through so that now young women and girls can have an easier path to just do what they want to do and not have to worry about all of the unnecessary things that might be blocking your way.
That is true. That is awesome. All right. So we've spent a little bit of time talking to people, women in particular, who are aspiring to get into esports. So now I'd like to switch hats and talk about how, like, some advice for women who are already actively competing in esports and have won a tournament or they're considering going into coaching or being a captain. What did the transition from being a pro player to being a captain look like for you? What was that like?
I have been the captain of the team since the beginning, so for
Ah,
7 years.
that's
I'm a
awesome.
Capricorn, okay? So I'm loyal, I'm hard-headed, I've got to lead the way, you know.
I
Um
love it.
and sorry, where was I going with this? There's obviously a lot of duties that are required of you being the captain of the team. Me, I was the lead nurse of where I was working. I worked in a mental health field, so I was helping people who were addicted to drugs and alcohol. And so you definitely needed some type of thick skin in that environment and being able to handle situations. Um, and transitioning that lead role as a nurse into gaming, I have to be able to think quick on my feet sometimes, and this this skill that I've acquired as a nurse has transitioned very nicely into gaming because sometimes you just have to be confident with what you're doing no matter what it is. And if I'm confident, then my whole team is going to be reeking of confidence too. And that's what's required to win. You have to be confident. Even if you're not, fake it till you make it. And this isn't anything that you do.
No, that's awesome. And I love that point that you made about how your experiences as a lead nurse transition and help you in a lot of ways when it came to being the captain of a team. So I know that in my journey, things that I never thought would apply to being successful in gaming and esports actually came from past experiences that had nothing to do with gaming and esports. So definitely don't discredit your personal experiences or your journey, because some of the paths that you take, the people that you meet, you never know when they're going to show up again and how it's going to help you. So I love that. That's awesome. That's TED Talk material right there if I ever heard one. You go ahead, Emily. I love it. So just because it is an issue in the esports industry, as it continues to strive for diversity and inclusion, there there's still disparities in a lot of ways when it comes to the way that men can navigate the space compared to women. And fortunately, there's a lot of initiatives and programs that are out there that are quickly and very much trying to close that gap so that everybody is on an equal playing field. But as a woman who is just getting started now, what are um, some advice or just insight that you can provide in navigating a male dominated space?
I think, well, being a woman in this world, not even in just gaming, it's a rough world in anything, unfortunately. Not just in gaming, but going back to gaming, I think us as women, and I'm noticing this a lot, we are supporting each other like no other, and I love that. Like we are like, you go girl, like I'm gonna push you. It's like good healthy competition, yet we're supporting each other, and that's great because if the rest of the world and community sees this, then that's a really great um lead to follow. Is if they can do it, then we can do it too. So I think, just in general, us as women supporting each other, continue to do that because this is something that we didn't have in the past. And I think this is what's going to elevate our sport even more as well. Again, it's really good, healthy competition when you're able to respect your enemies too. Coming from a pro player, you know.
Absolutely. And that the supportive community is so important on multiple fronts. And as a captain, I'm sure that's a large part of your day to day is being that guide in the room for your team, and being supportive, even if it's, hey, you did this great and you knocked it out of the park, or hey, we might need to work on this a little bit more. What's your favorite part about being a team captain? And then what are some of the challenges that come along with that?
My favorite part is probably the bond that I've created with each individual. Everybody's unique and special on my team. Some of my teammates were my bridesmaids to my wedding. Like, I've
Oh, I love
created such a tight bond with them, and I truly do love them. And I think that's important as a captain is to um connect with your teammates on a one-on-one, and if they trust you outside of the game, they're going to trust your input inside the game. It goes really deep into it, even though it's gaming. Like, we need to think like this is a sport. This is
that.
an actual sport. It's been validated so many times by traditional sports teams, so it goes that deep into it of wanting my teams to trust me in game and out. And this bond is like one of my favorite things of being a captain. And also I think it's really fun because, like I said, I was a lead nurse where I was working, and nothing is more satisfying than me making a call and that being the right call and us winning from it. So it's a very accomplishment satisfying feeling that all my hard work that I put into it was worth it.
No, I love that. And then when it comes to like your journey as a captain, what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself, your younger self now, with everything that you know now? The first time that you started your team, what advice would you provide to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh my gosh. Hmm. I wish I had learned earlier on to trust the process. Because when I first started, I was constantly worried. You're worried when you're not under a contract, are your teammates going to get poached because you're winning tournaments and you're not getting paid, you have no salary from this. Am I still going to have a roof over my head? If we don't win tournaments, I was constantly worried about so many things. How am I going to get to tournaments? When I first started playing with my team, people didn't pay for your tickets anymore. So we had to fundraise through Twitch. Some of my teammates used their college funds to get to tournaments. It was a constant worry of, oh my gosh, do we not have any money to get to where we want to go to prove ourselves? Again, another pathway, another thing I went through that I feel like a lot of women hopefully don't have to go through once we start seeing LAN tournaments again. But I would have told myself not to worry so much. Just believe in the process that you're doing is the right way, and just kind of encourage myself even more, because I wouldn't change anything that I did. Not at all.
Ah, I love that. Yeah, I saw trust the process in your Twitter bio, and I was like, yup. That is so important and so, so true. Like, so spot on. Alrighty. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to spend some time because you've been in the esports industry in a pro capacity for so long. What is your greatest hope for the future of esports in the United States?
Well, yeah, I would have answered that question very differently if you would have asked me a few years ago, because I'm seeing the way being paved more for young gamers, not even just women, for just gamers in
Mm.
general, of esports being a sport. So to answer that question now, I want to see it be more of a worldwide thing. Maybe I know there's been talks of the future of esports being in the Olympics. I think that would be absolutely amazing to officially be there. Hopefully, a sport like my sport that's a little bit more violent, but that's where I want to see the future of it. And technology is constantly evolutionizing, and I only see esports almost taking over the world. I think it's going to be a really big thing in the future.
No, I completely agree. It's been fascinating just in the past like 5 years to see how much things have changed and progressed. So it's a very, very exciting time to be sure. Awesome. Well, I did want to spend just a little bit of time about the business side of competitive esports because I think that, a lot of people see the tournaments, they see the players, they see the big stages and the bright
Mhm.
lights, but the behind the scenes of, getting sponsorships and navigating partnerships and even like you said, figuring out how you're going to get to tournaments is something that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about, because that's very much a big part of going pro in esports. So, what what kind of three pieces of business advice would you provide to women who are looking to go pro or just starting in their journey? Like some things that they should be aware of.
Definitely be aware of your own personal brand. Me and my teammates, when we were winning tournaments for about 3 years, top three constantly for 3 years, and we were not signed by an organization for those 3 years. So during that time, people thought that we were an organization in my team. That's how professional that we were. So definitely be aware of what you're posting on social media, because this will come back to haunt you if you're being toxic or really absolutely unnecessary behavior. Be cautious of that. And also always remember to be professional, be encouraging. People want to sign a player that others can look up to. This is definitely something on the business side of what the management is looking for. So as a player, it is much more than just being a competitor and playing. You want to be a brand that organizations want and are able to sell to.
No, Excellent advice. Yes. I and gosh, that's so important, especially as more and more companies, that aren't in gaming, non-endemic companies are getting involved in esports, so keeping a clean image and being professional is very important. Don't close the door on yourself prematurely doing crazy stuff on social media. Nothing half as sad as an opportunity going away because something you posted a year ago.
I've seen
Like,
it. Mhm. Yeah.
indeed. No, that's awesome advice. Okay, so sticking with the business side of things just for a minute, when it comes to um, joining an organization and some of the contracts and other things that are associated with it, um, it's a lot. I think a contract in any industry can be a lot to kind of digest, but especially so when it's in an emerging industry like esports is in the United States. How did you navigate that? Do you have any advice or best practices for people who they have the paper, they have the opportunity? How do you vet if it's a good decision, the right choice for you?
Two things that I've learned during the years of having to sign contracts is ask people around you who are experienced in signing contracts, because it's always good to compare two contracts to make sure you're not getting um, the bad end of the stick, I guess, to make sure you're getting your worth, because it's a business. So, a team might try to get the most out of you without you realizing, I guess. And this isn't a job, too, to be honest. Know your worth. And also, if it's a very serious contract, like a big thing, if it's a long contract, I definitely recommend looking into a lawyer, an esports lawyer or an attorney. It does get that serious. It gets that real, because you don't want to be stuck in a contract that you're not happy with. This is your life. So make sure it's something that you're fully confident in before signing. Because a lot of people are like, wow, I got a contract and I'm ready to sign right away. And you sign your life away for something that you maybe shouldn't have. Just make sure you know your worth. Slow down for a second. It is very exciting, but make sure you get some professional help before officially signing a contract.
Yes, that is amazing advice and very important. So listen up, everybody out there. This is you're dropping some gems today, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to talk about just a little bit for women who are on the fence, who don't think that there's a space for them and in esports, be it things that they've heard or maybe a bad experience. What would you say to somebody who has the passion, who wants to do it, but is struggling with imposter syndrome or just fear in general in getting started?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I think coming into the esports or gaming world, you have to remember it's relatable in anything that you want to do. Somebody is going to be pushing you down and make try to make you not do what you want to do, because there's just people like that in the world. And you have to remember, like, you will fall down. I've fallen down plenty of times. When you fall down, it's what you do when you get back up that matters. Are you going to push yourself? Are you going to use that negative energy that was sent towards you as motivation? And if you're able to take that energy and push yourself, then you will absolutely excel in whatever passion it is that you're trying to follow.
Oh, that was beautiful. Oh, that is so important. So I that needs to be on billboards and shirts and everywhere because I think so many people need to
Stop.
hear that. Like,
Stop.
because it's like I think, especially as a woman in an emerging industry, imposter syndrome is something that's so real, and I've been in gaming for almost a decade and I still have moments where I'm like, do you really know what you're talking about? Are you sure you're supposed to be here? are you really right for this role? So
Mhm.
what you just said
Mhm.
is so important. And it's not from a place of being like super cocky or, a lack of humility. It's just you have to be your own biggest cheerleader, and
You
that's
do.
really awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you has have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome at all throughout your journey, or and then what kind of, in addition to what you just said, was there any like other resources or people that you turned to help you sort through that?
Uh, I am a very, very blunt person. So if I'm in an Capricorn coming out again, if I'm in an uncomfortable situation, I'm just gonna say it, and I will say it in the most respectable way because we're trying to keep professional here. But I mean, other way, because some people just don't get hints. I've learned in my life they don't understand hints. So you have to be honest and blunt and just step away from that situation. That's the only why keep dragging it on. And yeah, I'm a very being blunt has saved me many, many times.
No, I love it. And I think we all can stand to be a little bit more honest about how we feel or what we think. I think so often, it's like, oh, I don't want to make them upset, or I don't want to, no, just
Yep.
just be authentic to you. It's important. It's
Yeah,
really
it
important.
is.
For the men who are also competing, who are going pro, and who are streaming or being coaches and captains in the space, how can they be better allies to women who are in the space already or are yet to come?
Hmm. Um,
Mm.
I think I'm starting to see more of this of men that are kind of stepping in and saying, "Hey, like that's not cool to be like that." And I think that's a great start. People are starting to make fun of these people, calling them names, but I think you need to not be afraid of that because we as women get called names all the time. Yet here we are, still doing what we love to do. So don't be afraid to be that one person that stands up for somebody in a room. Again, this could be in anything. But as someone who's witnessing somebody not get treated the way that they should, I would hope that you would be able to stand up for this person, even especially if it's online. You're behind a computer. It's a lot more easier than in person. So don't be afraid to be that person. And it's also a really good feeling knowing that you didn't just sit back and let it happen, too. I find myself in that situation sometimes when I might be playing in a game and this guy might be doing really bad. And this other guy is picking on him, like, man, you suck. You should leave. Just leave. And I'm like, hey,
Mm.
maybe if you were encouraging him and being a better teammate, he would play better because I could tell that this guy was getting sad. So I have a high pitched voice. So then this guy would start picking on me, and then everyone started to gang up on the bully. And I love that moment. We all started to gang up on the bully. So again, it was all because I spoke up and I wasn't afraid to. So this is for anybody if you're witnessing it. Don't be afraid.
I love that. That's perfect. Awesome, awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. This has been invaluable information, and I know it's going to help so many people. As our closing question, I'm a firm believer in investing in the young women, middle school, high school, even younger, that are in gaming, they're playing games, they're loving it, and they're starting to see people like you on the main stages, doing the thing that they might want to do one day. So, for the younger women, the future generation of esports, what's one piece of advice that you would give all of our younger gamer girls out there?
Well, I actually there's a college here in California, UCI, University of Irvine, that I go to every summer. well, it's online now because of COVID, but we talk with young girls, 7 to like 14 years old, who want to be a pro gamer, and to see their passion and them knowing that gaming is a career is something I would have dreamed of when I was younger. So just not being afraid to show that you do love gaming, I think it inspires me even as a player. So I love that we have these girls that want to be a professional. But my one piece of advice for them is probably to remember, and this is even on social media, that comparison can be the thief of your joy. So don't
Mm.
over compare yourself to somebody. You are who you are, and make yourself your own unique person. And that's how you'll live your ultimate happy life and get to where you want to be, really.
Ah, man. Yep, 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 yep. I'm all about it. That's awesome. And that program sounds amazing. I wish we had that when I was coming up through school too.
Yeah,
That would have been
parents come and
amazing.
everything. Oh my goodness, it's fun.
That's so cool. But Emily, thank you so, so much for your transparency and your time today. You've been nothing short of phenomenal. And I know that a lot of people are going to resonate with what you said here. So thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you. I had fun. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, that is a wrap for episode 4, but don't change the channel because we will have future episodes coming up. Our next episode, episode 5, is one you certainly don't want to miss. So keep an eye out on the Pittsburgh Knights social media channels for when that air date will happen. And if you haven't already, check out some of our past episodes. If you love this episode with Emily, you'll love the other ones too because we're hitting those topics. We're hitting them with honesty, transparency, and with some actionable takeaways, that people can apply to their professional journey, whether it's in esports or not. Advice is advice. But y'all stay safe out there, be kind, go out and support somebody who doesn't look like you today, and have a great afternoon. See you next time.